So I was talking to my sister the other day, and then we were talking about the subject of school. Now, mind you, we've been homeschooled our whole life, but we were in school for like a hot second, and we were discussing school field trips. And one of the school field trips that my sister went to was a high school play production of Wayside. Now, granted, I heard of Wayside, but I only heard of the TV show Wayside. And so when I heard there was a school play, I was like, that's a little bit weird, because it's like, why would they make one out of cartoon? I was very confused about the whole thing, because during this time, it was just it wasn't like a show that was necessarily poppin' or popular. You had to be there at the time of its running. But it wasn't until later when I realized that this show, Wayside, that I initially watched when I was a child, it was actually originally a children's book series from the 70s. And I was shocked, you guys, because if you watch the show, you would never realize that this was actually a story taking place in the 70s. Not at all. Just I guess if you watch Ramona and Beezus, because I remember watching Ramona and Beezus, the one with Selena Gomez and Joey King, and I was just like, wait a minute, there's actually a book series about it, and it took place in the 70s. The whole placement is weird to me every time I think about that. But I guess that's how movie adaptations are. They cater to the times now than it will be back then.
The Wayside School series was created by Louis Sachar.
He created Wayside Stories as a form of an outlet of just putting out his creativity. When I hear of the things that he was able to make in the book, I was like, wow, that's definitely a creative mind.
The New York Times wrote an article describing Louis Sachar's writing style, stating how the books were structured as a neat Rubik's Cube, each book containing 30 chapters, which is the number of floors in the Wayside School. And the amount of details that the article describes the books are very much chaotic. I suggest you guys just pause the video and just read it yourself.
It almost reminded me of my own writing. If you guys don't know, I have another channel where I create skits for kids over the years called Onyx Kids and Onyx Family, and that was basically my outlet for all of my creative juices. And when I read about Louis Sachar and his contribution to children's literature, it just reminded me of my type of writing, just basically going all out and just not being limited by, I don't know, just rules of society of just thinking oh, that's just too wild, that's too out there. No, he was just I created what I want. Louis Sachar was born on March 20th, 1954 in New York. At the age of 9, he moved to California, and at college age attended the University of California, Berkeley, where he graduated with an economics major. While attending, he began helping at an elementary school. Sachar recalled the experience like this, and I quote, "I thought it over and decided it was a pretty good deal. College credits, no homework, no term papers, no tests. All I had to do was just help out in a 2nd to 3rd grade class at Hillside Elementary School. Besides helping out in a classroom, I also became the noontime supervisor of Louis, the yard teacher, as I was known to the kids. It became my favorite college class and life-changing experience." After college, he wrote his first book, Sideways Stories from Wayside School, in 1978. The series consists of 6 books written in the span of 42 years, you guys. Let me give you a mind into how creative Louis Sachar was when creating Sideways Stories. I don't think anybody has ever really read a story that's as quirky as his stories, as his books. So here's something that I found out about basically his writing mind, his creative mind. As a high school student, Louis Sachar took a creative writing class and created a story called Apple Power about an evil teacher who transferred her students into apples. His teacher gave Louis a D because he thought he didn't take the assignment seriously. But thankfully, Louis decided to repurpose the story and put it in a chapter in one of his Wayside books. As he was working on his first book of Wayside Stories, he was actually working in a sweater factory, working at the factory by day and writing by night. He was eventually fired from his job, and that's when he decided to become a lawyer. And so as he was working part-time as a lawyer, going to law school and, doing all that lawyer jazz, he was hustling to become a children's author because that was his true passion. He was eventually fired from this job and he decided to go to law school to become a lawyer. So as he was working part-time as a lawyer, he was working on his main purpose, on his main passion, which was writing children's stories. His first book was actually published while he was in law school, and about 8 years after being able to put out more books, he actually earned enough money to actually quit and become a full-time children's author. Now, when you think of children's author, what comes to mind? To me, a few come in my mind that really shaped my childhood and how I tell stories. Anna M. Martin, the creator of The Babysitter's Club. Barbara Park, creator of Junie B. Jones. Judy Blume, Beverly Cleary. All these women shaping the children's literature world. And that's not to say that men didn't shape it as well. I mean, like, look at the books that we have that are written by men. Huckleberry Finn, Peter Pan, even modern authors such as Jeff Kinney, creator of Diary of the Wimpy Kid. There are so many authors out there and so many recognized by their contribution to children's literature. And I gotta say, it's something that I really appreciate that people were able to, just give out to kids. And, kids, I feel like these days, they're not really being serviced as well with books these days. I feel like that so many kids are just either on their iPads or they're just not reading anymore. And I feel like that, I know that there's a stigma like, oh, you just don't know because I'm this age and I don't know what kids are reading these days. But I truly do feel that kids are not necessarily reading these days, and it's so sad. And the thing is, well, let me pause for a second. I think they are reading, and if they are reading, they're probably reading manga maybe, because I feel like that's like the trend now these days. But I feel like that they're not necessarily reading books nowadays. And the thing is, I feel like we need that sort of story structure again where, we're not just looking at pictures, we're just actually reading chapters, we're reading full on 400-page books. And I don't know, that's just how I feel for us, especially when you're developing as a kid, to just be able to just, read fantasy and just read things that will stretch your imaginations. I feel like that's just something that's just needed in a kid. In 2005, Canadian animation studio Nelvana developed and produced an hour-long televised pilot, Wayside the Movie. Teletoon, the Canadian TV channel, greenlit 2 seasons from 2007 to 2008 of Wayside episodes, which aired on Nickelodeon. Now again, I never read the books, so I don't really know how they exactly adapted the book to the series, but it is said to loosely base on the books with several elements differ between the 2 works. The series received generally positive reviews from the critics, and most describing the series as a clever and often hilarious little show that demands a larger audience. Louis Sachar reportedly disliked the series, though he did like the animation style. Some criticized the differences between the show and the book, with one interviewer saying, "The series doesn't have the magic that the books had," and noting that while the books provided wacky, silly, with odd, funny, almost realistic but not quite characters, viewers got no such character development from the animation. So yeah, I mean, that's how I personally came to know about Louis Sachar's work of Wayside. But, there was even another book that I didn't necessarily read, but I watched the adaptation of it, that I didn't know that was made by Louis Sachar himself as well. That's even more famous than Wayside. Holes is a young adult novel written by Louis Sachar in 1998 about a young man sent to a boot camp after being falsely accused of theft. It took Louis Sachar a year and a half to write Holes, and he didn't tell his wife or daughter about it. The book was a success, and it won the 1998 U.S. National Book Award for Young People's Literature, and it won the 1999 Newbery Medal for the year's most distinguished contribution to American literature for children. Disney adapted the book into a feature film that became a success that starred the young and upcoming Shia LaBeouf. Now, let me tell you guys, that movie ran on Disney Channel for the longest time. I don't know if it's still doing it right now, but when I was younger, it used to run all the time, like all the time. Louis Sachar told Insider that several directors and producers wanted to buy the rights and turn it into a film, from the Coen brothers to Rob Reiner. Eventually, they settled with Andrew Davis. Lewis was involved throughout the film, from writing the screenplay to being on set and giving Andrew Davis input. Bowles was definitely one of his, magnus opus? Yeah, it was his magnus opus. That literally was just, it's a huge story. Like, I suggest you guys read it. I heard that it was really good. I haven't read it, but I don't know. I feel like I should read it. I feel like it's just something like a really good, because if the movie was good and the movie was really good, then I definitely feel as though that the book was even better.
Louis Sachar is married to his wife Carla, whom he met when she was a counselor at elementary school. They married in 1985 and have a daughter, Cherie, born in 1987. In his spare time, he plays bridge and tennis, and he resides in Austin, Texas with his wife and 2 dogs, Lucky and Tippy.
And yeah, that is Louis Sachar. Now, it's so interesting that most of us can hear about something from one source of thing versus the original source. Like, I basically heard of this man's work strictly through media, through a cartoon and a Disney movie. It's pretty amazing. It just goes to show you that, like, you can just have multiple avenues of where you place your creativity, and some people may heard of one thing from you and another person may hear from another, but ultimately it's just, you know, you're putting all your eggs in different baskets. And I think it's just so cool how he was able to just reach out through people, and not just with his books, but also through, you know, TV and movies, because it was, you know, a TV show that caught my attention. It was the movie that caught my attention. And, you know, it's so cool that he was able to even have that for his books. And I think that was, I don't know, I think that's really cool. So guys, tell me who your favorite author is, and I want to make a video of it, you guys. Give me some suggestions. Who are you guys reading these days? Please tell me you're reading. Please, please, please tell me that you're reading. All right, guys, I will see you guys next time. Bye!